Okay, as you can see, we have a handout on the board. I'm going to go over this handout and talk about certain things. I want you to take this time to write down the information that's on the handout. And this is just general rules about graphing. Now, graphing is something we do outside of solving equations and expressions. I want you to kind of make this separate. That's why I did a separate video on it, because you're going to see some equations and you're going to think, why aren't we solving them? Well, these equations have two variables in it because we're going to be dealing with the x and the y axis. So these equations are going to be a little bit different than what you saw in the previous video when we were doing expressions, and expressions does not have an equal sign. But the equations that we were doing in the last video had just one variable, and that's the x variable. These equations have an x and a y variable, so that will tell you, okay, this must be graphing. Okay? Now, we're going to go over the rules first, because I'm only going to go over one section of how to graph points. Hold on just a second, please. Okay, I'm back, and we were going over the first part of our graphing rules, and I was telling you that, hold on just a second. I was telling you that these equations usually will have an x and a y, and that's for you to know the difference between a regular equation and a linear equation. But basically, we are dealing with the Cartesian coordinate system. The Cartesian coordinate system is made up of the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis, which is what you're used to with a number line, and the vertical axis, which is the y-axis. The x and y-axis converge or cross at, not converge, that's not right, intersect at the origin, which has a coordinate of 0, 0. When they intersect, the two axes form four quadrants. The first quadrant, and I'm going to show you that here in just a second. Well, it's not letting me, so I'll have to go over here and do it. The first, second, third, and fourth quadrant. Okay, that's why there's a squiggle line that I don't know where it came from, but anyway, it's gone. There are the four quadrants. In the first quadrant, the x and the y is positive. In the second quadrant, the x is negative and the y is positive. In the third quadrant, the x and y are both negative. And in the fourth quadrant, the x is positive and the y is negative. Now, whenever you see a quadrant, or whenever you see a coordinate, the coordinate will be in a x, y form. If I decide to plot a point, and let's say that this number line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. And I decide to plot a point at 4, 2. Then I know that the 4 is in the x position and the 2 is in the y position. So I count 4 in the x position, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 in the y position, and that point is 4, 2. Negative 3, 4, negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 2, negative 2, would be negative 2, negative 2. And 3, 5. Oops, no. Let's go with 3, 1, negative 1. 3, negative 1 would be right there. So you see, with each x and y, you're either going to have a positive, positive, you're either going to have a negative, positive, you're either going to have a negative, negative, or you're going to have a positive, negative. And that basically gives you the 4 quadrants of the Cartesian coordinate system. So as we move that down, excuse me, now, connecting the points makes, when you connect 2 points, you form a line. Any line can be written in the form of the equation. This is called standard form. I'm going to take my red highlighter, or red pen, and I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to highlight that. You need to write that down. That is very important. Notice that you see a y and an x. This is different from the equations we were solving on the previous video. This is a linear equation. A linear equation is a line, is an equation that represents a line. Now, once you take your highlighters out and highlight the parts that I highlighted. The B, whatever's in that B position, is your y-intercept. Some people call it a vertical shift. You may have been in a class before where the teacher called it a vertical shift or a y-intercept. The M is the slope. Whatever's in front of that x, whatever coefficient is in front of that x, is the slope. And the sign of the slope, as you will recall in some of the previous review, the sign, positive and negative, don't tell us anything but what? Direction. So it tells us the direction of the slope. Either it's going left to right up or left to right down. The x is the input. The input is also called the domain. The domain is a fancy word for the numbers that we input. Range is a fancy name for the numbers that occur in the output. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. And there's one more page, I think, of properties. Slope. Slope can be found by solving for y, as we just had it in that form, solve for y, or you can calculate it if you're given 2 points. And these are the 3 examples of how you'll be given this question. Now, I don't expect you to do this a lot. This is kind of an introductory to what you're going to see in Algebra 1. But you can either find the slope by solving for y in that previous equation. The y was by itself. And once you have y by itself, you can find the slope because it's in that M position right in front of the x. Here, you are given 2 points, whether it be on a graph and you find 2 points, or they will give you 2 points, or they won't give you a graph, they'll just give you 2 sets of points. and you should be able to find those points. How do you find them? Well, which way do we read? Left to right. So the first set of points is going to be called your first set, x sub 1, y sub 1. The second point is going to be called x sub 2, y sub 2. Same thing over here. Which way do we read? Left to right. So this is going to be x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. That's just a fancy way of saying this is your first x and y, this is your second x and y. And I'm going to do this one just an example. Parenthesis minus parenthesis, over parenthesis minus parenthesis. Minus, minus, you always subtract. Y sub 2 is 6. Y sub 1 is 3. X sub 2 is 6. X sub 1 is 4. 3 over 2. So your slope of this line, represented by these 2 points, is 3 over 2. That's how you calculate the slope. And again, this is not an introductory. This is a review. And when you get to Algebra 1, you will see more of this. But that is a basic property of a linear equation, how to find the slope. Next, what about the equation? Now, again, this is probably going to be seen in Algebra 1. But there's no harm in you writing it down for later. To find an equation of a line, you use that equation. It's called the point-slope equation. And you use it with those same 3 type problems right above it. Those 3 right there. I'll just leave it right there. You're given 2 points. You're given a line and you find 2 points. Or you're given 2 points. Or you're given just the 2 points without a graph. And you find the slope and then you plug the slope in. Now you're going to see more of this in Algebra 1 review or Algebra 1. So I'm not going to do one of these for you because you don't need it for pre-algebra. But I did want you to write it down so you will see it later. Okay, so that's for your information. And the last section I'm going to cover for this review, if I can move this over, is the parallel and perpendicular lines. And that's these 2 right here. And that's the only thing else that we need to cover. That's the only thing that we need to cover for this last video of pre-algebra review. When you have x is equal to a number, for instance, I'm going to do an example here. X is equal to 3. X is equal to 2. X is equal to 5, negative 5. Those are all examples of x is equal to a number. When x is equal to a number, it's parallel to the y-axis. So I'm going to draw those 3. I'm going to draw those 3 lines right now. X is equal to 3. That's that one. And draw a parallel line. And x is equal to 2. Draw a parallel line. And x is equal to negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And draw a parallel line. So when x is equal to a number, you have a vertical line which is parallel to the y-axis. That means parallel to the y-axis. When you have a y equal to a number, y is equal to negative 2, y is equal to 1, y is equal to 6, negative 2, and it's horizontal, it's parallel to the x-axis. 1, parallel to the x-axis. 6, parallel to the x-axis. So when you have y is equal to a number, it's going to be parallel to the x-axis. And it's going to be a horizontal line. So these are a little bit of introductory things. Make sure you know how to plot points. And if you were to plot the points, draw a line between them, that's your line. Make sure you know that, and I'll just do a summary here. As far as graphing goes in pre-algebra, 1, you need to be able to draw 2 points, or let's say 2, 2. That would be 1, 2, 1, 2, and -1, -3. That'd be -1, -3. And then draw a line between those 2 points. That is a linear, that is a line. You should be able to find the slope of that line. This is x of 1, y sub 1. This is x of 2, y sub 2. And that's m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Y sub 2 is 2. Y sub 1 is -3. X sub 2 is 2. X sub 1 is -1. Now remember, you got 2 negatives right here. So we'll take our handy dandy red marker, and that turns into a positive. That turns into a positive. So the slope of this line is 5/3. So you should be able to find that. And if I give you y is equal to 2x plus 3, you need to know that this has a positive slope. You need to be able to tell me that its slope is 2 over 1. And you need to be able to tell me that the y-intercept, or the vertical shift, is 3. So here, since there's nothing in front of that 2, it's a positive slope. You need to be able to say 2 over 1 is equal to our slope. And 0, 3 is our vertical shift, or you can call it the y-intercept, whichever one the homework or the test wants. So, and the last thing, if I give you, I'm going to do this in different colors. What if I give you y is equal to 4? Oh, come on. If I give you y is equal to 4, that is y equal to a number. If y is equal to a number, you plot y, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it is parallel to the x-axis. There's that line. If I give you, let's do burnt orange, x is equal to -4, then you plot -4 on the x-axis, and you draw parallel to the y-axis. So, how many things should you know how to do in graphing? You should know how to plot points. 1, how to plot points. Draw a line between 2 points. 2, calculate the slope. 3, 4, be able to pick out what's in the standard line. That's 4, Be able to pick out the vertical and the horizontal shift. The slope and the direction of the slope and the vertical shift, or the y-intercept. And be able to draw when y is equal to a number and when x is equal to a number. So that's 5 things in graphing that you should be able to do. And that concludes this pre-algebra review and the graphing review.